Now, let's talk about running backs.
This is a position that is going to be very intriguing this year because
I'm a little nervous about it.
I am as well, but Tennessee, even though people think Josh Heupel, this high-powered offense, it's all about throwing the ball. No, it is built on running the ball first, and then you get the then you get into throwing the ball.
I think in all 3 seasons, sorry to cut you off, but I think in all 3 seasons, Tennessee's rushed for 2,500 yards.
Yes, I believe you're correct on that.
So, but like you were about to say, man, it's the running game that actually opens up this passing game. But of course, football and ESPN, they're all about the highlights. And a lot of times people want to see this. I mean, look at the NFL game, right? Look at what's happening in the running back position in the NFL. It's unfortunate. But here at Tennessee, man, we are nothing without our running back room. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And that's why I think it's a very important position group. There's a lot of pressure on these guys coming in this year because really, like you have it in this graphic, man, Dylan Samson is going to have to carry a lot of this load. But we got some new guys, some young bucks in the room, and we're going to be talking all about them.
Yeah, so as you see in the bottom left-hand corner there, in 2023, Tennessee had 2,878 total yards rushing on the season. That is good for 10th in the NCAA and first in the SEC, squeaking out LSU. And that was 204.8 yards per game. So,
and 3/4 of LSU's yards was from the quarterback. Just want to point that out. But
yeah. I mean, Tennessee had a 1,000-yard rusher this past year. I mean, Dylan Samson had over 600. Jabari Small had right at 500, I believe. So,
yeah.
And I've got over here your key losses are Jalen Wright, Jabari Small. I mean, Jabari Small graduated Jalen Wright to the NFL. Dylan Samson returning, and Dylan Samson's a dude, and he's gonna continue to be a dude. You've also got Cam Seldon, Khalifa Keith. Let's see, you've got I had it in front of me.
Deshaun Bishop.
Yes, Deshaun Bishop.
Redshirt freshman who joined last year as a walk-on. We've got freshman Peyton Lewis, who was a 4-star prospect. But we're going to kind of get into these guys a little bit. But then I think we wrap it up with 2 guys that I believe are walk-ons. It's Patrick Wilk and Hunter Barnes. One's a redshirt junior. The other one's a redshirt sophomore. One's from Nashville. Patrick Wilk's from Nashville, and Hunter Barnes is from Memphis, Tennessee. So, but everybody knows Dylan Samson, right? I mean, he was in the rotation last year despite, having to kind of sit behind Jalen Wright and Jabari Small, but he kind of earned that right to be arguably.
He was arguably RB2 last year.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say a 2A because, I mean, it was between him and Jabari Small behind Jalen Wright. But he earned that, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. He knows that he's that guy this year, right? He's got a lot to live up to as far as expectations. But behind him, right? Who are we going to, this group's always been a 2-back group, if not a 3-back group. Even with the fast offense, we rotate our running back quite often because we rely on that running game so much. I mean, you'll see there will be drives this year where we will run it 6 straight times because it's working, and then our guy's going to be gassed. It happens, right? Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, you've seen them every time they run. They're tapping the helmet like, dude, I just ran 70 yards in 5 plays. I cannot finish this drive. If you want the best out of me, you're going to have to get somebody else in here. And I mean, it is what it is. You'd love to see him push through, but it's asking a lot of a guy to do that when he's giving his 100% for 6, 7, 8 plays in a row. Because even your wide receivers, man, you'll see they kind of get to take a break after a play if their call, if their number's not called, they kind of just act like they're blocking or whatever. But who's going to be that guy, right? Who's going to be that number 2A, 2B? And Cameron Seldon is a guy that comes to mind, the sophomore. He's 6'2", 222 pounds. I mean,
and we saw his potential in that bowl game against Iowa. I mean, he looked really good. Of course, he made some freshman mistakes, but he looked really good running the ball as well. Now, here is my only concern about Cam Seldon. He had an off-season surgery this past year.
Yep.
But he is supposed to be available game 1. Matter of fact, I think he's going to be available for some summer practice, but how much is that right there going to hold him back, not getting to compete in the spring, work out some in the spring? So
I'm going to go off on a tangent. I'm going to go off on a tangent with that, though. So we say supposed to be. But just like, Cooper Mays was supposed to be ready for game 1 of the season last year. So, I don't want to put too much stock into, I hope he is. Don't get me wrong. But, think about what this coaching staff will do to you. Cooper Mays was supposed to be ready for game 1, supposed to be ready for game 2. I don't think he even played until the maybe A&M game. I can't remember what game it was actually his first start. But, it was well into the first or even second month of the season. So this shoulder, I think it was a shoulder injury that he had surgery on.
Yeah.
I am interested to see how the coaching staff handles it if he's truly going to be ready. Because I feel a lot better. If he's truly ready by the fall.
Yep.
But I'm a little nervous if he's not. But I'm also not. Because you got Khalifa Keith right behind him.
Yes, exactly.
And he's poised to have the biggest leap this year out of anybody in this group. I'm dead serious. From a guy who really didn't play at all last year. He's 6'1". He's our biggest back. He's 6'1", 233 pounds. But the dude can move. Oh, yeah. So I'm really interested to see how his pass protection is. He's going to play, no doubt about it. He took over Jalen Wright's first number 20. It's going to look familiar out there at least. But, like I said, my biggest note next to him was, could he make the biggest jump this year from a guy who I don't think took a single snap last year. Or if he did, it was in some garbage time.
It was garbage time. I looked up the numbers earlier. I forget exactly how many yards he had. It wasn't a lot, but of the returning running back production last year, of course, Dylan Samson had the most yards. It was 615 yards. 796 yards of the 2878 is your returning production from last season.
Yep. So we're definitely losing way more than half, almost 3/4 of your production, but that's okay. That's okay, man. New is not always bad, Yeah,
I'm excited for Khalifa Keith though.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited for the next name that I know you're about to say, and that is Deshaun Bishop.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, walked on last year
from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, he's from Knoxville. But I know it's just a spring game, man. So we can't take a lot of stock in it. But man, the way that he was able to run the ball in the spring game, that dude is also poised to, especially if Seldon is not healthy enough. He's got a chance to make his mark in a game, because at that point you would have probably Khalifa Keith as your number 2 behind Dylan Samson if Seldon is not available. And then, we like to have that third guy in the rotation. He might not be able to get as many snaps as some of these others, but we've seen Dylan Samson. He got his chance, and at times he was the guy that we went to. Take Kentucky. What was that, last year, I believe, or was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago when it was kind of garbage time, or was it Kentucky? I can't remember, but he kind of took over one of the drives. I think it was 2 years ago. And we just kept feeding him, and he kept getting yards. And I think he even scored the touchdown in that drive. He just was a dog in that drive. And I agree with you. He kind of took over the game.
So that's proof that if you get your time on the field and you prove that you can do it, hey, you're going to get more snaps. So I think that Deshaun Bishop, from what we've seen so far, if he's given his chance, he can really take over some production.
Yeah, I think one key thing before I kind of get into about Deshaun Bishop is, this group is going to be asked of a lot, but also really not that much. Pass protect. Your offensive line is experienced as crap. You're going to have gaps. Protect the ball.
Yes.
Do not put the ball on the ground. No fumbles. Absolutely no fumbles. Jalen Wright, if he had a flaw, it was protecting the ball. Especially in his first season. His first season was bad. It was really bad.
That's why on that 2022 team, Jabari Small was still RB1, because they knew that he was going to be able to protect the ball. Jalen Wright might have been your better running back overall.
Oh, undoubtedly. He was definitely more physical, but what is that worth if you're, dropping the ball once a game or whatever,
Yeah.
So no, this running back group is going to be asked of a lot, but again, protect the ball. Your gaps are going to be there, and just attack when you get there. Make that. Jabari Small was really good at this, making one cut and running.
Yep,
he was really good about it. So vision is a big thing, but I do believe a lot, and we'll get into the offensive line later. And I'm excited to do it, but they're going to have their spots, man. Deshaun Bishop, though, he joined last year as a walk-on. He's arguably kind of your mirror image of Dylan Samson at 5'10", 200 pounds. Dylan Samson's 5'11", I think 192. Deshaun Bishop's arguably the smaller back of the whole room, but he's very shifty, very quickie. Wow, very quick on his feet. Yeah, my bad. And just kind of gives you that. It's kind of cool how we have like a mixed bag, right? You have some of our more physical guys that'll put their shoulder pads down, but this guy, I don't think he's going to be looking for contact against a middle linebacker in the SEC. But he's one of those guys like me, man. You're scared to get hit, so he's going to run as fast as he can to make sure that doesn't happen. And very excited about him. And again, a bunch of sophomores, a bunch of redshirt freshmen in this group. So again, a lot of unknowns, but a lot of room for potential here. And I'm kind of excited to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, and I'm also excited to see this last guy. I don't think he's going to get very much production this year just because of the guys in front of him. And he also had an injury over the offseason that he got surgery on. But I think it was good that he did it when he did. So Peyton Lewis,
he'll probably end up redshirting this year. If I had to bet, he'll probably end up redshirting this year. But who knows? Maybe he'll play in 3 or 4 games. Because I think you get 4 games. But Peyton Lewis, 4-star prospect last year.
Yeah, he's incredible. I've seen some highlights of him. He's a fantastic athlete. Like I said, did have the injury, went ahead and got surgery on it. But I think it's a good move because your first year, you're learning some anyway. Go ahead and get that injury taken care of. Watch behind the guys in front of you. Make sure that you are healthy. And you come into year 2 of the offense, and you're ready to fight for your position.
That's right.
So I'm excited for Peyton Lewis in the future. I'm not sure how much we'll see of him this year, but fantastic athlete there.
Absolutely. And don't have a ton of information on these guys, but again, kind of rounding out, you got Patrick Wilk, 5'11", 200 pounds, redshirt junior from Nashville. He'll be wearing, I believe, the number 28 jersey this year. And then Hunter Barnes, 6 foot, 195, redshirt sophomore from Memphis, Tennessee. I kind of want to talk about the depth chart here, if we can kind of predict that. I think it's pretty simple. If everybo's healthy, that's kind of how I'm basing this off of. Yep. If everybody's healthy, I mean, I think we're both in agreement. Dylan Samson is definitely your number 1 guy. No arguments there. And I think your number 2 would be Cam Seldon if he's healthy.
Yep.
Khalifa Keith, your 3 back.
So I've seen a little bit of both. It
would be 3A, 3B between him and Deshaun Bishop.
Yeah, that's pretty much where it is. And I think that it's going to depend on maybe who has the better day. I think, depending on what happens in practice, Heupel's going to be like, hey, you're my guy this week.
Yeah.
But also, if you don't perform, if you don't do well out there, I'm going to throw this other guy out here.
I do also think that it kind of depends on the offensive game plan.
I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
If we're doing a lot more pass pro, if we're doing a lot more screens, if we're doing just a lot more running up the middle, I mean, depending on what our game plan is, I think kind of dictates who's going to be our 3 back to kind of get in that rotation, because that's, I think, where you're going to see a lot. If we're doing a lot of little, dump screens or, out to the flats, you're going to put out a guy like Deshaun Bishop, who's a little bit quick, a little bit smaller back. But if we need a lot of pass protection, you might put in a guy like Khalifa Keith, who's one of our biggest guys, for pass protection or running right up the gut in the middle, whatever. So I think game plan does have a lot to do with that. But for the most part, our 1 through 4 is definitely those guys. And then Peyton Lewis, freshman, he was a little banged up in the spring. I do think he'll end up redshirting this year. But again, just to kind of recap this, a bunch of sophomores, a bunch of redshirt freshmen, and even a freshman in Peyton Lewis. But I think you got the right leader in Dylan Samson to kind of lead that group. Very vocal. Oh, yeah. Very passionate. Very, very vocal. I mean, he's the leader. Even the guy who was the number 3 back last year, he was the leader of that offense undoubtedly, and couldn't think of anybody better to lead this group. And how important is that going to be this year? Because last season, your vocal leader on offense was Brew McCoy. And he's not, even then, he's not your just outgoing vocal leader like we saw in Hendon Hooker in the 2022 season. But then he gets hurt in the South Carolina game, and all of a sudden, you don't have your vocal leader anymore. So the fact that you have another guy this year in Dylan Samson that can step up and be that vocal leader along with Brew McCoy, I think that's going to be huge. Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%. But that is a look at our running backs room. That's kind of the preview of it, the depth of it. That's what we're wanted to do today is talk a little bit about running backs, a group that's going to be asked of a lot this year, man. I mean, mostly because it's just a bunch of unknowns, right? A bunch of, Dylan Samson and then who. And we wanted to fill you guys in on who's kind of behind them and who's looking to kind of step into the spotlight. Like I said, Khalifa Keith, in my opinion of everybody, I think has probably the most approved this year.
Yeah.
Depending on how you want to take that as far as with the team. But Dylan Samson undoubtedly is going to be the leader of this group, and we're going to need him to stay healthy all year. As really anybody. I mean, healthy. But, it's football, man. People are going to get hurt. It is what it is. So, no, the running backs group, man, that was – any last takeaways on the running backs group?
I think this is a very good group, and there were some Tennessee fans that once the transfer portal opened up, they were like, "Hey, we need to go out and get another running back."
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not thinking so either because if healthy, I think this is a very good running back room.
I think it's a solid group. I think you got a solid four or 5 man punch that even though they're unproven, I think they have a lot to prove, and I think that's what makes them a little dangerous.
Yeah. Now the other side of it, if you do have 1 or even 2 that get hurt or just aren't staying healthy,
you're asking a lot of the younger guys.
You are. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation there. But
100%. I agree.
I think I agree with what Hype on the coaching staff did. They didn't pursue a running back in the portal. You're going to trust your guys. And I think that I'm not going to say that this running back room is going to put out the same numbers that last year's group did, because I think you're going to have a little bit more from the passing game this year that's going to offset that. But I do think that this running back room is going to be just fine, and they're going to put up some big numbers this year as well.
Well, my thing is about your point about the transfer portal, man. When you got a winning formula, you don't want to add any poison to the water or to the well, whatever you want to. And so if you go in and grab somebody out of the portal, that may be a great addition to the group. Don't get me wrong. But what kind of sour taste in the mouth does that give the other guys in their group that you're going to be relying on next year or the year after that? And you don't ever want to put yourself in a position where you're kind of having to recruit somebody 2-3 times, which you're already having to recruit a player every year. Don't get me wrong. But, you don't want to put that. You're preaching loyalty, right? And if you go out to the portal and slap these guys in the face that are sitting at 3, 4, 5 deep, and then they're thinking they're about to jump up to the 3 or the 2, and then you go and grab a guy out of the portal just like that. That's not going to sit well, especially with a guy that's capable. And I think all of these players are capable. They just need some experience. And I think this year is why it's so key, is because they're going to get that experience this year. 100%. So don't want to really, poison the well per se. And I hate to say that again, but it's kind of my whole point about not going to the portal. Portal should only be used when absolute necessary,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah. And I don't want to get on a big portal tangent here because we can talk for hours on the portal, but I totally agree with you. If you feel like you've got the guys in your group already that can handle that spot, you don't go out and get another one. Tennessee, they felt like they needed some pickups in the wide receiver room, especially after this past season. And we'll get to the wide receiver room down the road. But, they felt like they needed some guys out of the transfer portal. They went and got them. I still feel like they've got some good guys here that can compete with those guys that they went and got out of the portal. But yeah, I totally agree with you. The transfer portal is something that should be utilized kind of as, I'm not going to say a last ditch effort, but you try to get an addition there that maybe you weren't able to get in your recruiting cycle.